Every morning at precisely 7:30, Sarah wiped down the counter of Harbor Brew, just as the bell over the door gave its soft, metallic chime. The sound was comforting, almost like the ticking of a familiar clock marking the start of her day. And just as it had been for the past 6 months, the man in the navy trench coat walked in. He was never late, not once. His name, she would later learn, was Jack. But for now, he was simply the man with the quiet eyes, gray, sharp, and a little tired, as if they had seen too much. He always ordered the same thing: black coffee, no sugar, no cream, no chatter. Still, Sarah talked to him. Just a little. "Good morning," she'd say, her voice carrying that half-hearted brightness all baristas learn to perfect. He'd nod. "Morning." That was the extent of it. But something about him made her look forward to those 2 words. Maybe it was the steadiness of his tone, or the way his hand lingered over the counter when he paid, as if wanting to say more but holding back. Sarah had grown used to people rushing through her cafe, their phones glued to their ears, their minds miles away. But Jack was different. He sat in the corner seat by the window, back straight, hands around his mug, gaze sweeping the street as though watching for something, or someone. In time, she began to notice things about him she never meant to. The slight limp in his left leg, the small scar near his temple, the old leather gloves he wore even when it wasn't cold. He read the paper but rarely turned the pages. He left generous tips but never smiled when she thanked him. And yet, in those silent minutes between brewing and serving, Sarah felt a strange comfort in his presence. Her own life had no such rhythm. Rent was overdue, her roommate had moved out suddenly, and her dreams of finishing art school had dissolved under the weight of double shifts and unpaid bills. Every day felt like a blur of caffeine, exhaustion, and polite smiles. But at 7:30, when that doorbell chimed and Jack appeared, the world felt, for a brief moment, predictable. Safe. Some mornings, she imagined what his story might be. Maybe he was an author, writing in his head as he stared out the window. Maybe a detective, haunted by a case that refused to let him rest. Or maybe, she thought on quieter mornings, he was just as lonely as she was. Once, she tried to ask him his name. "You're here every morning," she said, sliding his coffee across the counter. "Should I just start writing, the usual, on your cup?" His lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "That works," she laughed. "That's not an answer." He looked at her then, properly looked, long enough that she felt the weight of his gaze. Maybe some things don't need answers. And just like that, the conversation was over. That night, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about it. About him. It was ridiculous, she told herself. He was just a customer. A quiet one, at that. But something about his voice lingered, low, steady, kind in a way words couldn't quite capture. Over the next few weeks, their routine continued. She learned his preferred seat, how he liked his coffee extra hot, that he hated background music louder than a whisper. He never told her what he did for a living, but once she caught him glancing at the security camera by the door, his jaw tightening for a split second. She wondered what he saw when he looked out at the street, what he was waiting for. Then, one Tuesday morning, the rain came early. It drummed against the cafe windows, washing the city in gray. Sarah was running late, hair damp, apron crooked, when Jack arrived. For once, his coat was unbuttoned, his expression more drawn than usual. He seemed on edge, distracted. "Rough morning?" she asked softly as she poured his coffee. He looked up, as though deciding whether to speak, then said only, something like that. The next morning, the bell didn't chime. At first, Sarah brushed it off. Maybe Jack had caught a cold from the storm. Maybe he'd just overslept. She still brewed his coffee, black, no sugar, and placed it on the counter, just in case. The cup sat there longer than usual, steam curling upward and fading into the air like breath on a cold window. By 8 o'clock, she'd replaced it with another order. By 9, she caught herself glancing toward the door every few minutes. She hated how empty the cafe felt without that familiar navy coat at the corner table. Expecting someone, her coworker, Jenna, teased as she wiped down the espresso machine. Sarah forced a small laugh. Just, used to seeing the same faces, that's all. But it wasn't, just. The truth was, she missed the quiet steadiness Jack brought into the chaos of her mornings. Without him, the day felt off balance, like she'd forgotten something important but couldn't name what. When her shift ended around noon, the rain was falling again, soft but steady. Her phone buzzed with a message from her landlord, "Rent due today." Final notice. She sighed, pulling her jacket tighter. The thought of returning to her cold apartment, the pile of unopened bills, and the silence that waited there, it all made her stomach knot. So instead of heading straight home, she decided to take the long route. Maybe a walk would help clear her head. The streets glistened from the rain, reflecting traffic lights like pools of color. She passed the park, the florist's window with its wilting chrysanthemums, the bus stop where old men played chess under umbrellas. She didn't notice the black sedan idling across the street or the figure leaning against it, watching her. When she reached the overpass, the traffic thinned. The hum of the city faded into the rhythmic sound of rain against concrete. She turned into a narrow alley, a shortcut she'd taken 100 times before, when a voice broke through the quiet. "Hey, sweetheart, where you rushing off to?" A man stepped out from behind a dumpster, his jacket soaked, his breath sharp with alcohol. Sarah froze. He was tall, broad, his grin uneven and cold. "Don't be scared," he said, taking a step closer. "Just wanna talk." Her fingers tightened around her umbrella. "Please, just let me go." But he didn't. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. The umbrella clattered to the wet ground, and panic surged through her like lightning. She twisted, tried to pull free, but his grip only tightened. That's when another voice cut through the rain, low, calm, and terrifyingly sure. "Let her go." Both of them turned. Jack stood at the mouth of the alley, rain sliding down his trench coat, eyes locked on the man holding her. There was something in his stance, controlled, dangerous, that made even the drunk man hesitate. "Who the hell are you?" The man spat. Jack stepped forward. "The last person you want to see right now." Before the man could reply, Jack moved. It happened fast, too fast. He slammed the man's arm away, sending him stumbling into the wall. The sound of the impact echoed through the alley. The stranger cursed, tried to swing, but Jack blocked him easily, twisting his arm until he yelped in pain. Then he let go. "Leave," Jack said, his voice cold. "Now." The man staggered backward, muttering, and disappeared into the rain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Her knees trembled. She didn't even realize Jack had picked up her umbrella until he was standing right in front of her, holding it out. "You weren't at the cafe," he said quietly, his gray eyes scanning her face. "I thought something might have happened." She blinked. "You followed me." "Not followed," he said. "Just checked in. You looked off yesterday. Like something was wrong." The world around them felt suspended. Rain trickled between them, soft and steady, the city a blur of gray in the distance. Sarah tried to laugh, but her voice came out shaky. "You really came all this way just to make sure I was okay?" He shrugged slightly, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Call it instinct." She looked at him then, really looked. Beneath the wet hair and the shadows under his eyes, he wasn't just a quiet stranger from her cafe. There was a heaviness about him, the kind that came from seeing things most people couldn't imagine. "Who are you, Jack?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure he'd told her his name before. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time they reached the corner near Sarah's apartment. Streetlights flickered weakly through the mist, reflecting off puddles that rippled with each passing car. Sarah's umbrella sagged, the fabric torn from the scuffle, but Jack insisted on walking her the rest of the way. She wanted to say something, "Thank you," or "Maybe you shouldn't have followed me," but her voice stayed trapped somewhere between her heart and her throat. The alley replayed in her mind over and over, the stranger's grip, Jack's voice, the look in his eyes when he stepped forward. There had been no hesitation, no fear. Finally, she broke the silence. "You shouldn't have been there." Jack glanced sideways, rain still dripping from his hair. "If I hadn't been, you'd be in a hospital right now, or worse." His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried the weight of experience, of someone who'd seen that worse too many times before. Sarah bit her lip, guilt and gratitude warring inside her. "I didn't mean that, I just... How did you even know where to look for me?" He hesitated before answering. "Old habits," he said. "I pay attention to people. Patterns. You always take the long way home on rainy days." That caught her off guard. "You notice that?" "I notice a lot of things," he said, his eyes scanning the quiet street, alert even now. "It's part of the job. Or it used to be." When she followed his gaze, she saw the outline of a badge half hidden beneath his coat, glinting faintly under the streetlight. "You're a cop," she said quietly. Jack didn't confirm or deny it, just sighed. Was. Not anymore. She slowed her steps. Why not? He gave a tired half smile. Let's just say not every story has a clean ending. For a while, the only sound between them was the rain and the soft thud of their shoes. Sarah wanted to ask more, but something in his face told her not to push. The city felt muted around them, as if it, too, were listening. When they finally reached her building, a narrow, aging structure tucked between a laundromat and a tailor's shop, she turned to him. Would you at least come inside? You're soaked. He shook his head. I'll be fine. She frowned. You just stopped someone from attacking me. The least I can do is offer a towel. A flicker of humor crossed his face. You don't take no very well, do you? Not when someone saves my life, she said. That made him pause. After a moment, he nodded. All right, just for a minute. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of old wood and rain. Her apartment was small, barely 2 rooms, but it was warm. She handed him a towel, and for the first time, he looked out of place. The man who'd fought in the alley now stood awkwardly near her kitchen table, surrounded by watercolor sketches pinned to the walls and a chipped mug that read, "Good vibes only." You paint, he said, noticing the canvases stacked near the window. Used to, she replied. Haven't had much time lately. He looked at her. Then, the corners of his eyes softening. You should start again. Sarah blinked, surprised. You don't even know if I'm any good. I've seen enough to tell when something matters to someone, he said simply. The room fell quiet again. She busied herself making tea, partly to hide the way her hands trembled. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the deep, bone-level exhaustion that comes after fear. When she finally sat across from him, she found herself studying his face, the lines near his eyes, the faint scar along his jaw, the way he seemed to carry a weight no one else could see. Why do you come to the cafe every day? She asked softly. Jack exhaled, staring into the steam rising from his cup. Because it's quiet. Because no one expects me to talk. Because, some days, that place feels more real than anything else. Sarah nodded slowly. It's funny. I always thought you were waiting for someone. He smiled faintly. Maybe I was. For the first time, she realized how lonely he must have been too. 2 people crossing paths every morning, pretending it was just coincidence when maybe it was something they both needed. When the clock struck midnight, he finally stood to leave. You're safe now, he said. She walked him to the door. Jack, she called softly as he stepped into the hall. He turned. Coffee's on me tomorrow. He smiled, an actual smile this time, warm and tired and real. Only if it comes with company.